Okay, so welcome to today's session, and we are going to, like we've been doing before, we are going to be looking at what we'll do from Microsoft Learn. This is the second module here where we are going to be seeing how to get started with Power BI. And these are the things we'll do. We'll see how to use Power BI, we'll see how the building blocks of Power BI. We'll see how to tour the Power BI service, and of course, there's a knowledge check. I encourage you to go ahead and use this module here to learn the details. That's what I'm going to be following closely. So, we started in the last class discussing Power BI. Today, we are going to be looking at the various components of Power BI. Now, when you hear Power BI has got three very important components. We've got the Power BI desktop, which is what we started using last time. Uh, uh, the Power BI desktop is the primary tool that we'll be using for building dashboards and reports. So, what happens in the desktop is that users will connect to multiple data sources like we saw in the last class. They'll go ahead and transform the data, and they'll go ahead after that and create visualizations of visuals. So what happens in the desktop is, let me just change my color. So in the desktop, you connect to data sources, and after connecting to the data sources, you will transform the data, and then you will create visuals. So that's what happens here in the Power BI desktop. So reports that are created in the Power BI desktop are then published to the Power BI service. So you are going to be publishing all your reports from the Power BI desktop to the service. And as we move on, we are going to learn how to do that. Now, so what happens in the Power BI service? Now, in the Power BI service, uh, well, first of all, what is it? It's cloud based. That means you don't need to install it. It's available via a URL. Of course, I'll show you all of that. So, what happens in the service is that you will share the reports that has been published. So, reports are shared in the service. You will also share dashboards as well. And a lot of collaboration happens on the service. So collaboration happens in the service. So apart from collaboration, you can have other things like reports can be embedded in applications and all of that. So the first is the desktop. The second is the service. And the third here is Power BI Mobile. Now, Power BI Mobile gives you on-the-go access. Of course, from the name, is available on your smart devices, such as your phones and your tablets. So it gives you on-the-go access to reports and dashboards. So what you will mainly be doing in the Power BI Mobile is you are going to view. So you will view uh, all of the resources available, all of the reports and dashboards, and you get some notifications. So you get notifications here as well. So that's what happens. So these are the three components of Power BI. You've got the desktop. The desktop is available as a free download where you connect to your data sources, you transform that data, and then you visualize. Now, once you've visualized, you will now publish. Now, here too, this is where you are going to be doing all of your analysis. You will analyze, and then all of your DAX is going to happen here in the desktop. So, what that means is you'll be spending, as a data analyst, you'll be spending at least 60, more like 60 to 80% of your time playing around the desktop. So most of what we will be doing, we'll be doing in the desktop. Then the remaining 20 or so percent, and maybe uh, or so, maybe 10%, you are going to be spending on the mobile. Of course, the mobile is mainly for consuming your reports and dashboards. You are not going to be doing any serious analysis there. So most of the things we will do for the purposes of this uh, training is going to be in the desktop and in the service. Okay. So let's also look at the flow. How does data flow between all of those components? Now we see here that we've got different parts. So here we've got our data sources. Okay, so we've got our data sources here. And then we've got our Power BI desktop here. And then, of course, we've got the service here. And then we've got the mobile here. So that's basically how data flows. Now, Power BI follows a flow to transform raw data into insights, and it always begins with the data source. So Power BI connects to various data sources. Like we saw in the last time, these data sources could be databases, they could be cloud services, they could be Excel files, they could even be things called APIs, application programming interfaces. We are not going to be doing that, just for mention, and that's it. And in the desktop, you will be importing your data, you'll be transforming the data, you'll be cleaning the data, and the component of the desktop that we'll use to do all of that is what is called Power Query, which we started looking at in the last class. Okay, so you'll be using Power Query that allows you to do that. Now, within the desktop, like I said, is where we are going to be spending most of the time. It's the primary tool that we'll use to build reports and dashboards. You connect to your data model. That's where you create the model, you create relationships, you design your visuals in the desktop. And then you create your reports, which you are going to publish to the service. And then in the service, which is the other component, you are going to do a lot of things. Like I said, it's a cloud-based environment. You will configure things like data refreshes, the rate at which your data is going to be moving from your desktop to the service, and all of those kinds of things. So you'll be doing a whole lot of things there. So another thing we want to talk about before we get into the demonstration proper is the building blocks of Power BI. Now, Power BI has got two core building blocks. We've got what is called the semantic model, and then we've got another one called the visualizations, or visuals for short. So the semantic model is a very important aspect of. I've gone off. Okay. So we've got the semantic model, which is one important component of Power BI. So we've got the semantic model having a number of components. It has our connected data as part of the semantic model. And then we have our data being transformed. And then, of course, we will be having relationships. All of these things happen in the semantic model. So the semantic model is the foundation for data analysis in Power BI. It allows us to structure our data, to organize our data in a meaningful way, integrating data from different sources like databases, spreadsheets, and cloud services, for example. And within the semantic model, we'll transform our data by cleaning the data, reshaping the data, modifying the data using Power Query. The aim of doing that is to ensure that our data is accurate. And another thing we'll be doing on the semantic model is we'll do calculations. And when I say calculations, what we are going to be doing is DAX primarily. We'll talk a lot more about DAX as we move on. Okay, so the next thing that forms the building block for Power BI is what is called the visualizations. Of course, visualizations will include things like charts. We'll have charts. We'll have dashboards. Okay, we'll have dashboards. We'll have things called filters and slicers. Stroke slicers. If you are an Excel user, you probably know this already. And these are the core components here. So what visuals do is they give us an interactive way of representing our data, making us to have insights that are more accessible. Okay, Power BI has a lot of graphs, uh, bar charts, line graphs, pie charts, scatter plots, key performance indicators, lots of visuals we are going to see. And then combining all of this together, combining all of the visuals together, we can create dashboards that allows us to see all of the details of what we are trying to analyze on a single page, giving us at a one glance insight into our data. So, for example, uh, it's just like if you have driven in a car before, you can just glance at your dashboard. It's going to tell you something very important: your fuel level, of course, the temperature of the car. If there's any indication, maybe your engine needs some attention and all of that, you will be seeing all of that on the dashboard. And Power BI gives us the same functionality, allowing us to combine multiple visuals together to give one glance answers to a lot of the core problems that we are trying to be using, that we want to use the data analysis to try to solve, and to give us a one glance answers to some of the questions, telling us about, well, the health conditions of our organization. So those are some of the things charts and graphs do. And then we have filters and slicers that allows us to, well, view our data from different dimensions in different ways. Maybe we want to view it by year, by week, by month. The filters and slicers allows us to do all of that. And we've got things like drill downs, tool tips, cross filtering that allows us to engage our users in Power BI while they are interacting with our data. So these are some of the cores that we've got in Power BI. So without wasting time, we'll just get into the environment here where I'm picking up from where we stopped, where we were last week. We were discussing and looking at some of the things that we could do with Power BI. We saw how to import our data from multiple sources. We are going to be picking up from there, and we are going to now be, for example, just a minute, I want to cancel this. We are going to be picking up from there, and we had imported our data into Power BI. So we want to now begin to transform. So what we saw last week was we viewed our data, we looked at the data quality and all of those kinds of things. We'll now begin to do the actual transformation here. So To transform our data, we are in here in the report view, and I'll just go ahead and click on transform data, and it's going to open Power Query. All of our transformations will be done in Power Query. And to get to Power Query from the report view in Power BI, you want to go ahead and click on transform data, and it's going to open up Power Query. Now, we are going to do a lot of things here. We see that Power Query has a very similar interface to Excel. It's got tabs, it's got panes, and all of that. We've got the query pane here. We've got the view, the main view here. We've got the query settings pane here. Now, one of the things we want to do as data analysts is we want to name our queries appropriately. Now, we can see here that this query is called dim employees. Now, dim employees, well, depending on who you are speaking with, doesn't mean much. So one of the things we want to do is we want to go ahead and begin to rename each of these things. So one way we can rename it is we'll click on the name of the query, we'll right click on it and select rename. So I'll select rename. You notice that now it now allows me to rename. So I'll just type over it and call this sales person, for example. And then I'll go ahead and hit on enter. So notice that anything I do here also is reflected in the query settings page. So I've renamed that query and I've called it salesperson, for example. So I'm going to show you other ways that we can rename the salesperson query, for example, but that is just one way. Okay, so if we want to locate a specific column within a query, there are ways we can do that. Okay, so we are in the home ribbon tab here, and of course we can select manage column from the home ribbon tab, and that's going to tell us what we can move to, for example, different aspects of our query. So I can select manage column, and then I go ahead and choose column, and then I select go to column. So I'll come here. This is the manage columns group. I'll go to choose column, and I want to go to column. Now, why is this important? Sometimes we have a lot of columns and it can become cumbersome to scroll left and right. We can see here we've got quite the number of columns here, many columns. It's not very efficient for us to be scrolling through. So we want to go to a specific column, and it allows us to filter columns by natural order or by name. Let's go ahead and select name, and it allows us to now filter the column by name. I want to look for a specific filter called salesperson flag, which is it here. I'll go and select the column, and I'll click on OK, and that takes us to the column. Now, you can agree with me that that is a far more efficient means of navigating to the columns. Okay, so I have gone to the column, and there's a lot of information here I don't quite need. It tells me salesperson flag. It says false, 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 false. I just don't want to see any false. I want to see just the ones that are true. So I'll go ahead and uncheck the false. But I want you to take note of this applied steps pane here. And I click on OK. And we can see that we have an additional step. So what this does is this. Anything we do on a query, we see in the applied steps field. Okay, what that means is that if we made a mistake, we can come here and just delete that step, and it takes us one step back. It's like an undo button. Okay, so we can actually delete that, and it takes us back right there. Now, another thing we can do is we can remove columns. One of the things we want to do when we are transforming our data is to keep the size of our semantic model small. What that means is we have to only put in the data that we need, no more, no less. Because the bigger our data model, the more resources that Power BI will need to be able to handle it. So we want to keep our data model small. And one way we can do that will be to remove columns. We'll do again on the Home Ribbon tab in the Manage Columns group right here. Okay, so we want to go ahead and select Choose Columns. And then within the Choose Columns drop down, we'll go ahead and click on Choose Columns. Okay, so that opens up all of the columns. Now, any column we deselect here is not going to be displayed in Power Query. Okay, so I want to first of all deselect all and select only the ones I want to see. Specifically, 6 columns. One of it is employee key, for example. Employee national ID alternate key, for example. I want to see the first name. I want to see the last name. I want to see the title. And I also want to see the email address. Now, I want you to take a look at this bottom left-hand side of the Power BI window where you currently see 33 columns and 18 rows. So if I go ahead and click on OK, notice what happens. The 33 columns become 16. Become 6. And those 6 columns are the columns we selected. So every other column is not going to be visible. We now have reduced our column number for this query from 33 to 6. We are still keeping the row number as the same. Okay, so notice again that in the applied steps window, we have another step after filtered column stating that we've removed other columns. So that's very, 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 very important. Okay. Now we want to create a single name column called from first name and last name. So I'll select first name. With the control key press down, I'll go ahead and select last name. So that selects the 2 columns together. Okay. Now I want to merge those 2 columns into one. Okay. So, and how do I do that? One of the ways I want to do that is I would right click the column header of any of the 2 columns and I would select merge columns. That means I want to combine 2 columns together to become one. So I'll select merge. And now, despite the fact that I want to merge those 2 columns, I still want to make the data in those columns readable. So that means there's a need to have a separator. First name, separator, and last name. So in this case, I want the select separator to be a space. So it will be first name, space, last name, for example. And then I want to give the new column a name. That's optional. Because if you merge 2 columns together, the new column will have a default name of merged. But this time around, I want to call the column salesperson. So I'll just type salesperson. And then I'll click on OK. So we see now we had 6 columns. We now have 5. 5 columns and 18 rows. Okay. So that is another thing that we can do. We are still transforming our data, and of course, our data is taking shape. Now we want to rename columns. Some of these names don't really mean much to ordinary mere human beings that don't know too much of IT, like employee national ID alternate key. We are going to rename it. So to rename a column header, I will just double click on the header and it gives me the ability to type on it. I'll just call this column employee ID. And then I'll click on enter. Again, We can see we merge column, we rename column. Every step that we are taking is going to be applying it in the applied steps area to show what we have done. And again, is generating a formula here for us in a language called M, but let's not worry too much about that. So those are some of the things it does for us. Okay, so we want to also rename another column called email address. We want to rename email address to UPN. So this time I'm not going to double click. I'll just right click. And once I right click, I'll go ahead and select, there should be a rename option here. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Yeah, rename. So I'll go ahead and rename and type UPN and click on enter. Okay. So again, we can see that it gives us as a step. So that's all of the what we want to do in the salesperson salesperson query. So we can do the same thing for the other one. Let's go ahead and select this. This time I want to rename this. I'm not going to right click. I'll just come here under query settings in properties. There is a name text box there that I'll call that salesperson region. For example, I'll go ahead and hit on enter, and we have that as salesperson region right there. We want to remove the last two columns. So I'll go and select the columns. Notice that we have 4 columns here. If I right click on those 2 columns, another way, of course, the other way was so I clicked on remove columns. I can just right click this and go ahead and select remove columns, and the column is going to be removed. So we had 4 columns before, we now have 2. Okay. So we have 2 columns and 39 rows. Okay, we'll move on to the other query, and we want to always try to give our queries user-friendly names, names that, well, that will mean something to human beings and not just all those IT people that like to show off. Okay, so we'll just rename that product. Let's just call it product. And this time around, the first time I double clicked and then I went here, this time I'll just right click it and select rename and product. Okay. And we want to move on to the finished goods flag column. Well, I can go and select go to column. I'll select the column. I'll click on OK. And we are on the finished goods flag. And we want to set this to true. That means we want to view only goods that are finished goods. Notice again that, of course, the number of rows we have has changed, for example. And we want to remove all columns except a few. Now, the last time, we selected the columns we wanted to remove and we removed them. Okay, now we can select the columns we don't want to remove and remove everything else. Those are the 2 ways. So I'm going to go ahead and select a few columns. For example, I'll select product key, press down the control button. I'll select, I'll scroll down. I'll select English product name. I'll scroll to the right and select standard cost. I'll scroll on and select color. And then finally, I'll select another column that has a very interesting name. It's called the Dean product subcategory. Yeah, that's it there. Now I've selected 5 columns. I'll right click any of the column names and I'll select remove other column. That means I'm telling Power BI to remove every other column apart from the one I've selected. So I'll go ahead and select remove other columns. And you're going to see here that my column name, my column number, the number of columns I had has changed from 40 to just 5. That can be a more efficient way of keeping a few columns and removing everything else. Okay. So basically, we can do all sorts of these things right here. Now, I'll quickly go to the next query called the reseller query. And of course, apart from renaming it, I just want to show you some other things that we can do with the reseller query. First of all, I want to remove all of the columns except reseller key, which is selected, business type, which is also selected, reseller name, which I'm going to select right now, and deem geography, which I will go ahead and also select. And that's it there. So I want to remove other columns except those 4. Okay. So now, one of the things we discovered when we were looking at our product, at our data model, was that there were some values that were that were misspelled. We had warehouse written as 2 words and warehouse written as 1 word. So we want to correct that. So we want to right click the business type column uh, header. So I'll go ahead and right click the column header. And I want to select replace values. So I'll go ahead and specify replace values. I want to replace warehouse written as 2 words with warehouse written as 1 word. So this is basically a find and replace, same thing that happens in an Excel environment. Want to find every occurrence of warehouse in our model and replace it with warehouse as 1 word. So I'll go ahead and click on OK. And that has been done. We can see there is a value called replaced value here, which basically tells us what we can do. Okay. So there are lots and lots and lots and lots of things that we can do to transform our queries. And those are just some of the things that we will be doing, that we have done here. So we'll move on to the next query. I'll just go ahead and select another one. I'll just jump that one. And we want to rename this query to sales. So query rename to sales. That's pretty easy. And we want to remove all of the columns except the following column. So I can go ahead and see, I can go ahead and say choose columns. I will uncheck all and then check only the ones I want, like sales, order number, like order date, like product key, order date, product key, reseller key, employee key, sales territory key, order quantity, unit price, total product cost, sales amount, and deemed product. So notice we have 21 columns here. Once we click on OK, we just have 11 columns right there. So basically, these are some of the things that we can do. Now, we could also add a column here. We can add a custom column by maybe combining two columns together. We can add a custom column there. So to create a custom column, on the add column ribbon tab, I'll go ahead and select add column ribbon tab. And then from inside the general group, we have the general group here. I can go ahead and select here custom column. Okay, I want to give my custom column a name. I want to call it cost. And of course, cost is going to be a combination of other quantity and all of that. So we can base this off of a calculation. And what this calculation basically says is this. It says if total product cost is null, that means it's not in existence, then other quantity times standard cost. That means then total cost should be other quantity times standard cost, or else if it's not in existence, we should leave it at product cost. And that's it. We can actually create a new column, and that's the column there. That will be based on stuff like that, even though, of course, I have a few errors right there. So that's basically some of the things we are going to be doing when we have a transformation. And once we are done and happy with the transformation, we want to come to the home ribbon tab here. We go to close and apply, and then we click on close and apply, and it loads all of those details right here. It applies all the changes and loads it into the Power BI desktop. Remember, when we're pulling data from our data sources, we didn't click on load, rather we clicked on transform. Now, once we are done with the transformation, we'll go ahead and finish. And then, of course, I'll just neglect this error. And then, of course, we can go ahead and click on close. And we now have our data, which we can see uh, can see all of the tables, but of course we can see that our tables are currently do not have any relationship. So we can see all of those details that we've loaded into our semantic model. We can see the different kinds of tables and all of those kinds of things here. We can see the tables right here, and the columns in those tables, we can see them right there. So so that I don't bore you with too much of the details, those are basically all of the things we will be doing when we have a data transformation task. So that's what we are going to be doing for today. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to go off. See you again when we have the next session.